Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is John. I'll be doing a series of videos on Middle-earth role-playing. The first series, which will probably be about 8 or 9 videos, or 8 or 9 parts, I should say, will be on Middle-earth role-playing character creation. And I will also mix in how to fill out my spreadsheet while you're creating your character. The last video will actually be creating a character in 30 minutes or less, just to show you that it can be done. And this first video is going to primarily be an introduction. So I'm not really going to get into the actual creation of the character until part 2. So if you would like to skip all the introductory stuff, you can just disregard this video entirely. But before we get started on the introductions, I do want to say a few things. And I just don't want to have to do this in every single video because it makes me feel like a beggar and I don't want to beg. Um, if you like my videos, please feel free to hit me with a like. And if you don't, I completely understand. I wouldn't want to sit here and watch me either. Um, but obviously, some of you are okay with it. So we're just going to go with it. Um, I do want to thank all of my first 50 subscribers. It means a lot to me. It's a huge milestone for me. I know it's just a tiny little thing when you compare my channel to so many others, but I feel really great about it. I want to just express my appreciation to the first 50, and I would like to I would like to invite the rest of you to subscribe to my channel as well. And I also want to apologize to any of you who have been waiting forever for me to get these new videos posted. I have, for various reasons, been unable to. I have failed miserably a couple times in the last couple weeks trying to get these videos done. And I am hoping each time that I work on them that it's going to be the right set. So hopefully this is the last time I have to start over. If any of you have watched my character creation video from last year, you might recall that I mentioned in there I started that thing over 200 times before I finally went with it. And honestly, if I would have sat down and watched that thing, which I haven't watched the whole thing, I probably I would have wanted to start over again. I am my own biggest critic, and I was going through that video, probably got through about half of it because I was trying to make notations in there in case I made a mistake or did something stupid. But at some point, I got away from doing that too. It's just it's too hard to watch myself in a video. I drive myself crazy. But anyway, hopefully I don't drive you guys crazy and girls. Uh, I want to also, again, I do apologize that it's taken this long. Please forgive me. I'll try to be more proactive in recording Middle Earth role playing video, or I'm just going to say MERP from now on. Most of you by now probably know that it's referred to as MERP. So I will be trying to be more proactive in creating more MERP videos, and not just character creation. I want to get into all kinds of things. If anyone has any ideas, I know some of you might have mentioned could I do a video on combat and various different things. So I will be trying to do those. I do promise you at some point, hopefully this year, I don't know when I'm going to be not just comfortable with it, but also technologically sound to do so. I would like to start running some games and also recording those sessions. And if that goes well, I will be posting those recordings on my channel and hopefully in a playlist. I am by no means even remotely close in comparison to a Matt Mercer. Matt would be a 20 on a 20-sided dice, and I would be a 1 or a 2. So I can't even hope to have my videos compare, but I will do my best when the time comes, and hopefully the players that will be in my campaigns will be almost as good as the players in in Critical Role. And for any of you who are unfamiliar with Matt Mercer and Critical Role, I would definitely recommend that you just type that into your YouTube um, box and give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. You will definitely, there will be times where you will laugh, and there will be times where you will cry, and they are that good. So anyway, let me also invite you to not that page yet, this page, which is my Facebook group, Guardians of Middle Earth, that I started last year. We hit 100 members. I like to call everyone Guardians. We hit 100 Guardians right around New Year's, and we are growing pretty well, pretty fast in the first 5 weeks of this year, 6 weeks maybe, 5. And I would like to invite all of you to join us. And if you know anyone else that would be interested in joining, feel free to invite them as well. You can actually, if you are a member already, feel free to just add someone's name and bring them in if you think they might be interested. We would love to have more Guardians in the group. If you do join the group, you can pop in the files section and you'll find the blank copies of my spreadsheet. They'll actually be a different name because these are soon to be obsolete. I just want to finish these videos before I post the new spreadsheets up, and they will be probably called master blanks. Anyway, you'll be able to find them easy. You'll also be able to download a PDF copy of the first edition and second edition rulebook, and we will actually be using the second edition during this video. I would recommend, if you're watching these videos, please feel free to join my group, if for no other reason. And I do believe some people have joined just to get a copy of this rule book and maybe even a copy of the spreadsheet, and then scooted out of the group because sometimes it goes up and then it goes down. But anyway, you could download this and use this while I'm going through the character creation. It'll be very helpful. I'm going to do this video. This is going to be more like an introductory video. So we're going to pop, I think, right over to page 26, which if you go up in there and hit 29, that'll take you, well, actually, I want to go back just a tiny little bit. We'll go to page 24. There will be a spot on the character spreadsheet for demeanor, personality, motivation, and alignment. You can find ideas to use for your demeanor and personality right on these pages, and also your motivation and alignment. Just gives you some different examples. Excuse me, I'm trying really hard not to yawn in these videos, but later on when we're filling out the character spreadsheet, you will want to refer to page 24 and 25 for your for those demeanor, personality, motivation, and alignment. Those are also on other pages elsewhere in the book. A lot of these things are actually repeated 3 or 4 times throughout the book. It's a lot of pages that are duplications, and just to fill up a book and sell it for a certain amount of money. I love the book, I really do, but it could have been a lot thinner, or it could have actually had a lot more in it. But it is what it is. There are mistakes in it also, so anyone that's familiar with the first edition may have picked out some of the same mistakes that I've picked out over the years, but we won't go into those right now. At some point in time, probably when I'm doing other videos that aren't involved in character creation, I may touch on those. Now, what you're going to be doing is what you probably do in most RPG games, which is role-playing games, will be rolling for your stats. And the stats in Middle-earth are, well, their strength, agility, constitution, intelligence, intuition, and presence. You'll also be rolling for your appearance. And we are actually going to start the rolls in part 2 of this series I just kind of want to go over various things, just to just kind of brief you on what we're going to be doing in the other parts of this series and give you an idea what it's all about. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to end up rolling stats. See, if I do it this way, I can explain everything now and then just go through the process when the time comes. We're going to roll D100s, and we're going to roll 6 of those. And when we do roll those, what's going to happen is it's going to eliminate anything that's under a 20 and re-roll. So you're going to have 6 rolls that end up above, like it'd be 20 to 100, and then you'll roll for your appearance, and whatever you roll for appearance is what you roll. And that's what I mean, it could be a 1 and you're stuck with it, but we're not completely stuck with it, but we'll go into that later too. So your stat values, like your roll results, this is what those are going to be, and they will determine your bonuses and your PowerPoints. And your PowerPoints basically are, just to put it in a nutshell, give you an idea, that determines how many spells you can cast per day, how many levels of spells. Like, for example, if you were level 1 and you had 4 PowerPoints, which you won't because you won't be a 102, but if you did, then that would mean you could cast 4 level 1 spells. If you were level 2, you could cast 2 level 2 spells, or a level 2 spell and 2 level 1s. But basically, it tells you how many levels of spells you can cast. So when you have your PowerPoints and you cast a spell, basically think of it like this: however many PowerPoints I have to subtract from that total the level of spell that I'm casting. If I cast a level 7 spell and I'm a level 10 and I only have 10 PowerPoints, then I got 3 left. If I'm a level 10 and I have 20 PowerPoints, then I would have 13 left. So we'll get into that more later as well. But I do want to point out there is a stat bonus effect table. These are for your primary stats, all right? And then you also have a secondary stat bonus effect table that is on page 213, I think. Yes, 213. And that is for your secondary skills. So when you are trying to decide where you want to place your stats, you will want to look at these 2 tables and decide what's most important to you. The way I create a character could be entirely different than the way you create a character. And I will tell you this, when I'm creating a character, one thing that I will definitely take into account is the length of the campaign for which I'm creating a character. If it's going to be a one shot and done, or even if it's maybe going to be 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, I create a character completely different than if I was going to create a character maybe to play over a course of several weeks, months, or years. And there are reasons for that, and I won't really take up too much of your time. Anybody that has role played in the past would kind of have an idea what I mean by that. Basically, it just means if you're only playing a game for 1 session to 5 sessions, it's not going to be a whole lot of leveling up. So you're going to want to really kind of front load your character, like you want him to be able to survive. Not that you don't want him to be able to survive anyway, but it's just a totally different way to create a character. Not necessarily how you assign your stats, but for me, I would probably assign stats a little bit differently, depending on the character I'm creating and the length of the campaign. For example, I may not put so much emphasis on strength for various characters if it's a long campaign, but if it's just something short, I might want to at least be able to fight for the couple of sessions that I'm going to be in. So I might want to put something in strength where I might normally put in intuition or intelligence. We'll get into that more when I do actually create the character. But those are your stat bonus effect tables. For most people, you're going to want to look at those and get an idea what looks like something you want to excel in. Like, if you really want to be great in riding, you might want to have one of your stats one of your higher stats being in intuition. I will tell you the agility stat is my number one stat. If at all possible, I try to put my highest stat value in agility because you will notice that is what affects your defensive bonus, and defensive bonus is pretty much what keeps you alive. And your body development is hit points. So constitution affects your body development or your hit points. It also affects your resistance to disease and poisons. It affects very little else. So for me, constitution is what most people would refer to as a dump stat. Um, we'll get into that more when I'm assigning my stats. I'm sure I will kind of go into more detail when I'm placing those. But just so you know where the stat bonus effect tables are, again, the secondary skills would be on page 213. I'm just going to kind of go through this, first few pages before you actually get into developing a character. There's a lot of different things that that you might want to know before we start creating the actual character. So here are your 6 stats: strength, agility, constitution, intelligence, intuition, and presence. For those of you familiar with D&D, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with a whole lot of different games, so I'm going to probably do comparisons to D&D. And also, I just realized I have a bad habit of looking up, looking down, turning left and turning right. And if my voice cuts out when I look side to side, I do apologize. Hopefully everybody can hear everything that I'm saying. My computer that I recorded last year's video on died a horrible death last year. And this computer, I can honestly say, is the worst computer that I ever bought, going all the way back to 1987. I would actually say this computer is worse than the Tandy 1000 that I bought in 1987, which was a 4 megabyte computer and could barely do anything. But I would, as far as the time, the time period that I bought that in versus this machine should be so much better. And I'm sorry, I'm ranting about my computer, but this computer is terrible. So where my last computer, my mic could pick me up if I passed gas in the next room, this one doesn't pick me up if I turn to the left or the right, and I'm talking just as loud as I'm talking now. And I'm not kidding you. The other one probably could have picked somebody up passing gas in the next room. So I will be buying a new computer very shortly. Anyway, I just got to find a computer that doesn't get bad reviews. Every time I'm getting ready to buy one, I read reviews and then I have to back out because it only takes one bad review. These are your stats, and these are your abbreviations: ST, AG, CO, IG, IT, and PR. Kind of give you an idea what they are. It's pretty simple. And then we showed you your stat bonus table. You will have to pick out a culture, race, and a profession. I will mention this right in this video. You may as well do this before we even get to the next steps, like the next part. Take some time. Look in the racial description section, which starts, I think, on page 146. I will verify that. 146. Yes, page 146. You definitely want to look through the racial descriptions and figure out what race of character you want to play. If you don't really know, there is a spot, and we'll get to it eventually, where you can roll randomly and let the dice decide what you're going to play. When you're creating a character, it will be a good idea to check with the game master of whichever games you plan on playing in, which races he allows, or she. Some will not allow you to play elves, or they might say you can only play a human or a dwarf or whatever, and we all have our various reasons. Like me personally, I don't allow anyone to play an orc or half orc, Uruk-hai, Ologhai, troll, half troll. I tend to lean against allowing anyone to play any of the human races that are considered to be servants of the enemy. If you had a good background story behind it, I would probably allow it. Let's see. What I was starting to say, though, is before you start creating your character, take the time to figure out ahead of time what race you want to be, what profession you want to be, and we're going to talk about professions. Um, the background options, we'll talk about those. And if you're going to be a spellcaster, you need to look through the spells and have some kind of an idea which spell lists interest you the most. Because the last thing you want to do is take an hour deciding what race you want to be, or an hour deciding which spells you would like to choose if you get the opportunity to pick a spell list. It can be very, very time consuming, and it's unnecessary during the character creation process. So if you can get those things figured out before you try to start creating your character, it will be helpful. At least if you're going to someone that's like, for example, if you come to me and ask me, hey, John, will you help me create a character? I would be more than happy to meet you in my Discord channel, and we'll hit the voice buttons and we'll talk to each other and get to know each other. And I can get you through that character creation process. If you've done those four things, race, profession, background options that you're interested in, and by the time you're done with these videos, you should be ready, because I'm going to explain each background option in the section, in the part that I'm going to guess that the background options are probably going to be either part 4A and 4B, or 5A and 5B. Wherever you see the A and the B in the parts, that's going to be the background options, because it's going to take me two parts to cover the background options. So if that helps people decide on background options, or you need me to explain, you can jump to those whenever you're trying to figure that out. And also, like I said, spell lists. Look at spell lists if you're going to be a spellcaster, so you have an idea. If you have the opportunity to learn a spell during your character creation, then you have an idea which spell list you're interested in. So, oh, and there's a little bit on background options. So you have various different things. Now, with the background options, um, some game masters will choose your background options. Some will make you roll for your background options, and some will allow you to choose. And by the book, it can be any one of those three. I personally want everyone that comes to me to create their own custom made character. I want that character to be what you want it to be. I will tell you, I had to create a character one time, and I was not allowed to choose my own background options, and I they weren't chosen for me, I don't think. Pretty sure I rolled for them, but I hated the rolls that I rolled, and it just took that much enjoyment out of me playing that character, because I almost felt like it wasn't a character. Not only did I hate the rolls, I rolled horribly for my stats, but you know, I can just tell you from personal experience, it's much more enjoyable to play a character that you create, you custom make, you pick background options, and hopefully you get decent stats. Because if you don't, you kind of sort of maybe might not give a hoot if you get killed the first time out. And I mean, I hate to sound like that, because it kind of makes it sound like, um, oh, he just doesn't want to play with his weaknesses. And every character you play is going to have weaknesses. And like I said earlier, there is no such thing as an OP character in Middle Earth. But I just, you know, it just, as far as the background options go, I think it's only fair that each player should be able to pick their own out. And we will get into background options in later videos. Special racial modifications. This gives you an idea of bonuses that each of these races gets. The Umlai is a half dwarf. Woes is, if you remember from the Lord of the Rings books, those are the Pukul men. When the Rohirrim were coming down to Gondor and they met those wild men of the woods, that's the Woses. And man, that's going to be anybody that's not a Woes or a Dunedain. And there are a whole list of those. We'll find those somewhere as well. You have half orcs. You got your orcs here, trolls down here. These are your elves. But it just tells you what the modifications are for each race. And those are all built into my spreadsheet. A lot of this other stuff we'll get into when I'm rolling up a character and going through the spreadsheet, like height, weight, things like that. You are going to find a lot of that information, like average numbers for your race will be in your race description, the language that they speak. Let's see here. These are your 6 primary professions or your basic professions. There are in the back of the book on page 214. There will be a list of optional professions. As far as I'm concerned, if you come to me, you're welcome to create anything that you would like to create. But again, as in with the race, you will want to check with your game master and make sure that the profession you would like to play is allowable in his campaign. There are a lot of game masters in Middle-earth role-playing that do not want magic users in their campaigns, understandably so. Number one, it can be complicated. The whole spell casting can bring complication to the game. I personally don't mind it so much. I just feel like why play the game if you're going to limit people to what they're allowed to do? For me personally, I would rather not play a spellcaster because it's too complicated for me. But if I'm going to be a game master and somebody wants to play a spellmaster, I have to deal with the complication. But a lot of game masters will not let you be a spellcaster, and they may, there are times when they'll say fighters and scouts only. It just make sure before you create your character that race and profession are acceptable for the campaign that you want to play in. Well, in the parentheses here, it kind of gives you a little bit like this is kind of comparing it to like D&D. The thief in D&D is like a scout. The fighter in D&D is like the warrior. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Ranger, I thought was a ranger, and the bard. I think there's a bard in D&D if I remember right. Mage, magician, mage. I thought there was a mage in D&D. I could be wrong. And animist is like a cleric or a priest, maybe. Not 100% sure. Honestly, it's been 30 years since I played Dungeons and Dragons too, so I don't remember half or even a tenth of what I once knew about Dungeons and Dragons. Skills, we'll get into skills, skill rank bonuses, primary skills. You have primary skills and you have secondary skills. Remember the little stat bonus effect table that I told you about, where you had the one, I think, on page 26 and the one on page, I don't know, 213. Oh, yeah, I knew that. 213. Those are your secondary skills. Your primary skills are the ones that are on, I think, page 26. Skill rank bonus table. This isn't really important. This is all built into the character spreadsheet anyway, so it's not really important. And I'll kind of go over that anyway when we get to the spreadsheet. Movement and maneuver skills, basically that's how well you move. and do maneuvers in your armor class, you must have a total bonus of no less than a -10 in order to wear any armor, like whatever the armor class is. If it's rigid leather or soft leather or chainmail or plate mail, if you don't have at least a -10 or higher, you can't even move in that armor. So there. I actually did have a gentleman one time that wanted to be a mage, if I remember correctly. If he wasn't a mage, he was definitely in the essence realm, and he wanted to wear plate mail armor or chainmail armor. He wouldn't have even been able to move in the armor in the first place, and it's not allowable in Middle Earth role playing to wear armor while you're casting magic from the essence realm. And while you're casting magic from the channeling realm, you may only wear leather armor. So I do tell people you can wear whatever you want as long as you're able to move in it. But if you're a spellcaster, you will not be allowed to cast spells in 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 the armor unless it's channeling and you're in leather armor. The weapon skills, this just kind of gives you you have one-handed edge, one-hand concussion, two-handed thrown, missile, and pole arms. Oh, sorry. The missile weapons are your bows and the bola and the sling, I believe. General skills: climb, ride, swim, and track. Subterfuge skills. We're going to get into all these as we create the character sheet. This is more of an introduction kind of video. Ambush skill. That I might have to. That's a totally different skill, and I may actually do a small video. I probably will do a small video at some point on how that works out. Um, it's definitely it's a different skill than all the rest. That one actually you only get 1 point for each rank instead of 5, but we'll talk about that later. Stalk and hide, pick locks, disarm traps. Uh, you can just read through all of this stuff. The magical skills, just read through it all. I don't want to really like explain everything. Most of it's kind of right there on the page for you, and we'll be talking about various different skills as we're creating the character. As far as the language rank table, level 5 is like your max level for learning a language. Level 1 is basic communication. Body development is, again, your hit points. I think probably everybody knows what hit points are. Secondary skills. Oh, here's another one of those. Okay, so that table that I had you look at on page 213 is also on page 35. I told you there's repetition all over this book. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere else too. And experience level, we're probably. Oh, let me. No, I don't have to go into any. I will tell you this: back in the back, the 212 and 213, it will give you more of a description of what each one of these secondary skills is all about. It will also tell you about these skill groups down here and give you ideas for various artistic, athletic, um, crafting. Well, I'll just read it: crafting, influence, and lore skills. So it'll give you different ideas for those, and you'll see on my spreadsheet where you'll be able to actually put in your own choices for those skill groups. Felt like I was going to say something else, but maybe not. PowerPoints. I think I touched on the PowerPoints earlier. Whatever your number of PowerPoints is, that tells you how many spell level points you have. So if you're a level 10 and you cast a level 10 spell, you are done for the day. Learning spell lists. We'll talk about how you learn spell lists. Basically, think of it this way. Basically, you can only learn one spell list at a time. You can't try to learn 5 at a time. Let's see, casting spells we'll talk about later. Matter of fact, I may do a separate video on casting spells and how that all works. Miscellaneous factors. That might actually be kind of in the combat video. Miscellaneous factors. Those are resistance rolls, defensive bonus, equipment money, encumbrance. That's all on the spreadsheet as well. There's another stat bonus table. You probably have about 5 or 6 of these scattered throughout the book. And weight penalty table. Basically, how this works is you will take your character's weight after you create your character. You'll take your character's weight and see what the total weight of his equipment is. For example, if you're 141 pounds and you're carrying 36.5 pounds of equipment, this is your encumbrance penalty. So say your strength is a 15 and your encumbrance penalty is a 20, then for every maneuver you do, you will be at a -5 because this is a negative against your strength. So whatever your strength is, this number gets subtracted from your strength, and everything you do carrying all that weight is going to be at that penalty. If you have a horse and your horse, say for example, is carrying your 28 pounds of food, then obviously you don't have that in your backpack. So a lot of times for people that have horses, when I am putting their character sheets together, I figure out exactly what they would probably be carrying and what the horse would probably be carrying, and therefore I can tell whether or not they're encumbered. Now, if your horse is stuck out at the entrance of a cave and you're carrying all this stuff through a tunnel system or something, then that changes everything. But I'll be honest with you, when I'm running a campaign, I don't pay total attention to what everybody's carrying. I don't really look at encumbrance, but because it is part of the game and part of the sheet, I did add it to my spreadsheet because it would have been rather silly to not add it, even though I don't totally use it. But it is there for anyone that does use encumbrance. Equipment and money, we'll get into all that. Defensive equipment, blah, blah, blah. And we'll talk about this later, but your shield is going to give you a plus 25 bonus against one foe in front of you and to your left. We'll get into all that later. When I do videos on combat, we'll talk about how the shield works. The helmet, the helmet and the arm greaves and the leg greaves all protect you from criticals. If it's leather and it protects you from a critical, it's considered ruined. So sometimes leather working can be a good secondary skill to develop. So you can try to repair your leather equipment. A helm will protect your head, but it will also give you a -5 to perception. Your leg greaves will protect your legs, of course, from bleeding damage, but it will affect your movement and maneuver and will be a -5 against your movement and maneuver in your armor. And your arm greaves will protect you from bleeding damage on your arms, but will affect your offensive bonuses. So you'll be at a -5 to all of your offensive bonuses while wearing leg greaves. And the encumbrance penalty, I kind of talked about that a little bit already. Experience points and advancing levels. I may as well just tell you each game master will do this differently. Years ago, I kept track of every single little detail of the game. And it's time consuming, it's tedious, maybe not completely necessary. And so, at the time, I never really considered any other way of doing it other than the way the book does it. But this gives you ideas for how the experience points work. What I do now is something I picked up from other GMs who do similar. Well, actually, some of them do the exact same thing. That's why I decided to do it because it makes it so much simpler. Is if you're playing in my campaign, you are going to level up for every 3 sessions that you are there for. So that's how I work it. It just saves a lot of work for me, and it keeps me from being distracted trying to write things down and keep track of everything everybody does. It's unnecessary, to be honest with you, and I would rather have more of a free flowing game. I don't want to get bogged down with the minutia of all the rules um, of the game. I want I want to try to flow as freely as possible without getting away completely from the rule book. But this is one thing that I think is a good way to eliminate a lot of time consumption while playing, and that is to just automatically award people a level up for every third session. I mean, that's generally I think where I would be if I feel like it's going too fast. Maybe once you hit like a certain level, for example, maybe once every 3 levels until you get to level 5. Maybe from 5 to 10 once every 4 levels. Maybe from 10 to 20 once every 5. So something like that, because you shouldn't be leveling up as quickly as you get higher. I would say the first 5 levels, maybe once every 3 sessions. And or then the next 5 would probably be once every 4, and then after that, maybe once every 5. Um, that sounds like a good way to do it. So that's just all experience points, character levels, blah blah blah. Advancing a level. So when you do level up, we will do a development for you when you level up, and that will be very, very well. It will be pretty much exactly like your apprenticeship that we're going to do in the character creation video. Um, and I will tell you right up front, when I create a character, I actually do allow secondary skills for your character creation. Once you create your character, then upon leveling up, you wouldn't get any more. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I give you free development points in your adolescence and your apprenticeship to develop whichever secondary skills you feel like you want to develop. But after that, for you to improve those skills, you will have to transfer your primary skill development points to secondary skills if you want to improve anything. Because number one, the book doesn't even allow you any bonus points for developing secondary skills. That's kind of another idea I picked up from another game master, which I really, really like, because I think if you don't do that, it's going to be extremely hard for anyone to ever learn a secondary skill, because you almost have to put your primary skills into your primary skills, or you're going to be almost useless doing anything, especially at lower levels. But if I give you those free points every single level, you will be a monster with your secondary skills, and you probably shouldn't be. So, I do allow you freebies for adolescence and freebies for apprenticeship, and after that, it's up to you what you want to do as far as developing your secondary skills. Um, Performing actions. We're not going to go into this section at all. That will definitely be for other videos. That's pretty much giving you various rules for various different parts of the game, like combat, how you deal with mounted maneuvers, static maneuvers. This tells you, see this chart? That's going to be another one of those that's probably in the book 2 more places. Moving maneuvers, moving maneuver table, totally different video we're going to be dealing with. Let's just say I'm going to kind of zip through all of this. Has nothing really to do with the character creation. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's for the game master. NPCs. Oh, I probably got like 20 more pages to go before we get to yeah. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to just stop this video now. and I'll get to the page that we want, which I think is page 79 maybe. We're almost there. It's a lot that you can. This is a nice, probably a spot you might want to consider looking at too. Um, you don't have to look at it now, but injury and death, healing. We'll get into all of that probably in other videos. Miscellaneous topics. We'll talk about some of that. What we're going to do in the next video is hit designing a character. I'm sorry for some of the things maybe that didn't need to be in this, like the last 2 minutes of me scrolling through all of those pages. But I really wanted to touch on a lot of that other stuff so you kind of have an idea where some of those tables are. Hopefully in the next video I can just kind of refer to things. This was just really an introductory kind of session, and then in the next part we will get right down to rolling our character and assigning our stats and filling out some of the basic information about the character, and then we'll go from there. So thank you very much for your patience in this video. I know I said it in the beginning of this session that you could just jump straight to part 2, but I kind of really felt the need to do this introduction. So thank you very much, and join me for part 2.